Welcome to Serotonin Saturdays.
I'm Kat.
I'm Rachel.
We are the Pandemonium.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Completely derailed this morning. I turned the heater on. It is 44 degrees outside.
Somebody left the freezer open.
It wasn't me. I have a problem putting things into the freezer, but not.
I meant outside, but yes.
I was just letting Rachel know as of a few days ago, which this is end of May. So, I'm supposed to be giving birth at the end of May. The doctor keeps changing what day. And it's like, make up your mind, you know?
Well, that's because your baby keeps changing their sizing. So they're going off of what sizing says.
Originally, the baby was growing 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Now, baby is only growing a week ahead of schedule. The listeners already know by now what we're having. We're having a boy. Do we know what we're naming him? No. We've gotten a lot of great feedback, but we've narrowed it down to 21 names over the course of the last 6 months. I have a chore chart, which has kind of been keeping me in line. So,
Also, narrowed it down to 21 names out of 100 plus names that you had is a huge step. So, that was huge.
it is huge because a lot of the names it's not that I'm married to them. It's that a lot of them have significance. So, like John, Joe, Lawrence, William, Robert. And so I was naming all these wonderful names. And so I decided to throw some Twilight names in there just to see, right? Because my husband pays attention, but he doesn't pay that much attention sometimes. So I was like, well, what about Emmett? And he's just like, that's an okay name. And I was like, okay, well, what about Jasper? And he looks at me, and the way he looked was just like, bam. And I was like, what? It's a good name. And he's like, we are not naming our child after Twilight characters. And I was like, come on. So obviously, before we get started with anything and we do the little dance break thing, which I love, Rachel loves, and Em liked it. She listened to the most recent episode and she says she misses us. And we miss her too. You know, we want her to come in and guest on an episode here pretty soon. Not my husband sending me something. I was like, you didn't pick up Rockstar from the store. I'm going to have to go to the store and pick it up. And he goes, I didn't want to stop. I just wanted to get home to my amazing wife.
That's so sickeningly sweet. And here comes the emotional crying.
He's like, please don't cry. I'm like, it's hormones. I can't help it. I hate iPhone autocorrect.
Gotta love and hate it at the same time. Because sometimes it's hilarious. Sometimes it's not. What are you doing? Also, I was adjusting my light earlier because I was like, let's see if I can get rid of the slight shadow on my face. No, I tried to move it and it was just like glaring into my eye. And I was like, that's going to be a migraine. I'm going to move it back.
Okay. So what I was trying to do was picture in picture. So that way I could have the document on one half of the screen. So let me send a picture to you. It's Dom, the girl I did the spell for. She's just like, it's the army being the army. So I sent the Paris Hilton. Ew. You know. Um Okay. So, of course, it is Saturday. It is your guys' favorite day of the week. Normally we do something happy and something like super fluffy. We decided to take a different route today. We're not doing schmurder, not doing any unaliving, not doing any graping or anything.
I just looked at the photo. I do that every time. You don't?
No. What I do instead of having The split view is because I have everything open in my podcast account, and then I have my research account, which is completely separate. So I can't do that. I just shared the ability because I was on the phone, and one of my friends was like, why don't you just share the document so you can do it that way? And I was like, I would have thought about this if I wasn't pregnant. But unfortunately, my child is going to come out speaking 8 languages and know calculus fluently.
Because I usually have it all on the same window, and so I just pull up my research in like a different window, so I'll have like sorry, I'm getting used to it. Having my my research over here on one side where it's long enough so that way I can read it, and then us in on another side where it's just big enough so that way I can see you, but not enough that I'm distracted by looking at myself talking, because that happens a lot.
Well, I just switched the windows. So instead of it being the video on the right side, which I'm used to you being on the left side, I just switched over. So normally we do something fluffy. We're not doing anything fruffy today. Not our unspoken mascot, Fruffy the cat. We're going to be talking about history. And something that I particularly deep dove on in my 20s and in my teens, because it was a fun, it's Emily. Hold on. Not calling. Hold on.
I couldn't hear what she said.
She was like, I really want chocolate. Emily sent me a snap and she's like, I am sick and tired and I just really want chocolate. Emily's currently undergoing chemo. Unfortunately, that's all I'm going to tell you guys. That's her history. You know, that's not mine. And of course, my big old glasses are in the other room. So instead of doing, she looks so angry. It's her face. That's not nice. You always look angry, Rachel. I have resting bitch face too, but it's primarily when I'm disassociating or if I'm reading. It's just anyways. She says same shit, different case. So today we're talking about something in California. So we've already talked about a few places in California. We talked about Haunted California on our states episode last year. We talked about the Winchester Mystery House, which will always still freaking get me, man. Every time. But today we're talking about Hearst Castle and William Randolph Hearst. Now, if this is not your shtick, you know, that's okay. You can just scroll. I'll completely understand. You don't love us. You don't care. But it's not to be confused with Hearst Castle, which is Henry VIII's device fort, which is located near Lymington in England. Today we're talking about Hearst Castle, which was created by William Randolph Hearst Enterprises. Are you ready?
Aye, Captain.
Sail away, let's go. Okay, so known formally as La Cuesta Encantada. Yes, I can speak Spanish. Qué bueno. So, I just look white. So it's a historic estate in San Simeon, which is located in the central coast of California. Now, it's nearby to Santa Barbara, but it's in the mountains. The mountains is where San Simeon is. The mansion was created by William Randolph Hearst, the publishing tycoon, and his architect, Julia Morgan. Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fixing a nail.
You made a face. You went,
Oh, yeah, because of all the shit he's done.
I get into that. I'm eating for two. I already had breakfast this morning. I'm having a protein shake. I'm fine.
I know, you started talking and you were still muted. And I was like, ma'am.
I have to keep remembering. One moment. Since I don't have separate windows, I don't have to keep hitting my mouse button. It just stays muted. So I have to unmute it. Anyway, so the castle was built between 1919 and 1947, which was when the Great Depression was, roughly around that time. The land was purchased in 1865 by his father and was built atop 127 acres of roaming hillside. Fun fact, they still have zebras roaming the estate to this day. They're just out. They get fed and everything like that, but they're wild zebras.
I wonder if they're inbred at all.
He had like 5 originally. So I don't think
So yes, they're inbred.
probably, maybe, I don't know. The giant castle was completed by none other than William Randolph Hearst. Today, Hearst Castle is a museum open to the public as a California state park and registered as a National Historic Landmark and a California Historical Landmark. I go into some of the antiquities and some of the architecture, which Rachel has a raging hard on for. So, George Hearst, William Randolph Hearst's father, had purchased the original 40,000 acre or 63 square miles for our non United States friends estate in 1865, and Camp Hill, the site for future Hearst Castle, was used for family camping vacations during Hearst's youth. This is Daddy Dearest, George.
That's an impressive beard.
I know. Do you see his stash? I must ask you a question. Like and he has the flippity flops on the hair with the
The flippity flops on the hair.
Also on another note, Rachel and I have been reached out to regarding merch. So we're branching out. We're going to be talking about that over the next couple of weeks. So you guys will be able to hopefully get some sweaters, some t-shirts. I'd say, why is it always arsenic? Not the gumdrop button.
Then you get something. Get something to support us.
Sydney's already said she wants merch. She wants one that says, why is it always arsenic? And another one that says, oh no, not another dead body. Tell me more. I tell you. So, the future Hearst Castle was used for family camping vacations during Hearst's youth. It was called Camp Hill. So, born in Missouri in 1820, George Hearst made his fortune as a miner, notably at the Comstock Lode and the Homestake Mine. He then undertook a political career, becoming a senator in 1886, and then purchasing the San Francisco Examiner, which is still around to this day. Investing in land, he bought the Piedra Blanca property in 1865 and subsequently extended his holdings with acquisition of most of the Santa Rosa real estate. and much of the San Simeon's land. In 1870s, George Hearst built a ranch house on the estate, which remains a private property maintained by the Hearst Corporation. And the San Simeon area has become a site for family camping expeditions, including his young son, William. Particularly a favored spot was named Camp Hill, a site for the future Hearst Castle. Years later, Hearst recalled his early memories of the place. Quote, "My father brought me to San Simeon as a boy. I had come up the slope hanging on the tail of a pony. We lived in a cabin on this spot and I could see forever. That's the West. Forever." George Hearst developed the estate somewhat, introducing beef and dairy cattle, planting extensive fruit orchards, and expanding the wharf facilities at San Simeon Bay. Before, San Simeon Bay only had a couple of the small ports, which are the little docks, you know? He built full-on piers. He also bred racehorses. And a lot of his horses were at the racing stables in California.
Very impressive. He really helped the local economy.
Especially with his fruit trees, because they were needing to be tended to by, local gardeners, as it were. While his father developed the ranch, William, and his mother, Phoebe Apperson Hearst, traveled, including an 18-month tour of Europe in 1873, an 18-month tour of Europe.
I mean, I too would like to spend 18 months traveling Europe.
Bitch, same.
But also to have that kind of money to do that is very impressive. So she basically went, I believe my husband and my kids to develop this place, and I'm just going to go off and do my own thing. Okay, sis, I see you.
Well, this is where William's obsession with art and collecting it started, was in Europe. Soon after the death of his mother, Phoebe, in 1919, William commissioned the architectural pioneer Julia Morgan to build something more comfortable, something a little bit more his style, his speed, up on the hill, the genesis of the present castle. So, when George Hearst died in 1891, he left the estate of $18 million to his widow, including the California ranch. When she died, or before she died, she shared the cultural and artistic interests of her son, collecting art and having patronage with architects. She was a considerable philanthropist, founding schools, libraries, supporting the fledgling University of California, Berkeley, along with including the funding of the Hearst Mining Building in memory of her husband. Beautiful building, gorgeous architecture. I don't have a picture of it, but obviously if you look it up, beautiful. And making major donations to a range of women's organizations, including the YWCA. During this period, probably in the late 1890s, Phoebe encountered Julia Morgan, who was then a young engineering student at Berkeley. So when she died in 1919, William inherited the ranch, which had grown from the original acreage, which was 40,000 or 63 square miles, to, are you ready? 250,000 acres or 1,012 kilometers square, and 14 miles of coastline, which is 14 miles of coastline or 23 kilometers of coastline, as well as 11 million additional dollars.
Holy poopsicles.
Holy poopsicles is right.
since we're trying not to cuss. Holy poopsicles, that's a lot of land.
Got a strongly worded DM to my author account saying, "Why did you stop swearing?" And I was like, YouTube? Question mark. We want to be able.
We did not want to stop swearing. Swearing is who we are. But if we want to be on the tube of the U's, we have to stop swearing, which sucks.
It's unfortunate. However, they are finding a new drinking game and they won't tell me what it is, so we can't divert. If I get one more phone call from Virginia Tech of a teacher going, "They're going to die from alcohol poisoning again," I'm sorry. I don't know what game they're playing now. I can't fix it.
Leave it to college kids to make a game out of almost anything.
So that's what I learned. Anyways, so about Hearst Castle. So within days, he was at Julia Morgan's San Francisco office saying, "Hey, I have an idea." Julia Morgan worked in close collaboration with William for over 20 years. And she was born in 1872, was 47 when Hearst entered her building in 1919. Her biographer, Mark A. Wilson, described her subsequent career as, quote, "America's first independent, full-time woman architect." That's impressive.
Very much so.
Baby said I wanted protein shake. Baby got protein shake. Baby said no more protein shake. I'm out of protein shake. I can't give you anything more. And it said, no, I'm going to have it more again. And I was like, no. It's not going to come up.
Oh. We're not going to play on a pogo stick going up and down. No.
If I have to run out of the room, that's because morning sickness is back with a vengeance. So after studying at Berkeley, where she worked with Bernard Maybach, who was a giant as far as architects are concerned, in 1898, she became the first woman to win entry. I'm going to butcher this is French, to the prestigious École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. So, passing from the École in 1902, Morgan returned to San Francisco and took a post at the practice of John Howard. Howard recognized her talents, but also exploited them. The best thing about this person is I pay her next to nothing, as she is a woman. In 1904, she passed the California Architects licensing examination, and as the first woman to do so, she established her own office at 456 Montgomery Street in 1906. Good for her. During her time with Howard, she was commissioned by Phoebe Hearst to undertake work at the Hacienda del Pozo de Verona estate in Pleasanton, because they had a large estate out in Pleasanton. This led for work at Wine-Tune and to a number of commissions from Hearst himself in unexecuted design for a mansion in Sausalito, north of San Francisco, a cottage at the Grand Canyon, and the Los Angeles Examiner Building and the Hearst Castle estate. The Los Angeles Examiner Building is still the same building that she built.
I absolutely love that.
I do too. She has fantastic. You're going to see the pictures and you're going to be like, oh my God. So I just sent Rachel a website, which of course I'm going to have websites for everybody to go to. I just realized I have 20 pages of notes. So I'm going to try to get through more than I can, because I really wanted to do a lot on Julia Morgan because she was the first woman architect. How bad bunny is that? Can't say the other word I want to say. Anyways, 1919, William Randolph Hearst. He was 56 years old and the owner of a publishing empire that included, but not limited to, 28 newspapers, 13 magazines, 8 radio stations, 4 film studios, and extensive real estate holdings, 31,000 employees, and a portrait in a pantry. He was also a significant public figure, although his political endeavors had proved largely unsuccessful. The influence he exerted through his very direct control of his media empire attracted fame, and he was a playboy in equal measure. In 1917, one biographer described him as the most hated man in the country. That can be debated now. Anyways, the actor Ralph Bellamy, a guest at San Simeon in the 1930s, recorded Hearst's working methods in description of a party in the assembly room. The party was quite gay, and in the midst of it, Mr. Hearst came in. There was a teletype machine just inside. He stopped, and he read it. Then he went to a table and picked up a phone. He asked for the editor of his San Francisco newspaper and said, "Put this in the 2-column box of the front pages of all newspapers tomorrow morning." And without notes, he dictated an editorial. That's pretty Bad Bunny of him. Hearst first approached Julia with the ideas for a new project in April of 1919, shortly after the death of his mother. And his original idea was just to build a bungalow, according to Walter Stylberg, which was one of her draftsmen, who recalled Hearst's words in an initial meeting. "I would like to build something on the hill at San Simeon. I'm tired of going up there and camping in tents. I'm a little too old for that. I'd like something that would be more comfortable." Within a month, his ideas for a modest dwelling had expanded. Discussion on the style began with consideration of Japo-Suizo themes. Then the Spanish colonial revival style was favored. Julia used this style when she worked on his Los Angeles Herald Examiner headquarters, which they've used in tons of movies like Superman and Spider-Man. You can see it in the foyer. They use the same type of style because the terracotta clay and the large, robust columns. William appreciated the revival, but was dissatisfied with the crudeness of these structures. So they added more sophistication, and he objected to the abundance of ornamentation. He said it was too much. You saw how big the castle is now. It's huge.
It is very huge.
Thomas Idala, in his 1984 study of the castle, notes the influence of Churrigueresque on the design of the main block, flat and unembellished exterior surfaces, which is more like the adobo style housing. Decorative urges are particularized and isolated, focused mainly on doorways, windows, and towers. So their partnership lasted from 1919 until he left the castle in 1947, because he didn't die there. A lot of people thought that he did die there, but he spent most of his happiest times at Hearst Castle. Victoria Kastner, which is the in-house custodian, described the partnership as a rare but true collaboration between Julia Morgan and Hearst himself. There is a correspondence of letters between the two of them that is actually at the Robert E. Kennedy Library at Cal Poly in SLO, also known as San Luis Obispo. And there are over 3,700 letters and telegrams exchanged between the two of them that were saved. Walter Steelberg said the rest of us could have been 100 miles away. They didn't pay any attention to nobody. These are two very different people that just clicked. They were friends. And he said they were seated opposite each other, and they would often discuss and review work, consider design changes, pass drawings back and forth, and they were completely oblivious to anybody else but themselves. It's like a bestie. Would you like to know how many rooms?
Of course.
The construction contained 165 rooms with 123 acres of gardens, terraces, pools, and walkways. There are a total of 42 bedrooms, 61 bathrooms, 19 sitting rooms, 127 acres or 0.5 kilometers squared of gardens, indoor, outdoor, swimming pools, tennis courts, movie theater, an airfield, and during Hearst's lifetimes, the world's largest private zoo.
Like I said earlier, holy poopsicles. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That was not a great view of the bump.
What?
I said that was a great view of the bump with you walking back in.
He just kicked my hand.
He loves hearing his auntie.
Well, no, he can't hear you. I was tapping on the belly and he kicked it.
Listen, I can tell myself whatever I want.
He still likes hearing your voice. When I'm on the phone with her, I have it on speakerphone next to my belly. And when she starts laughing, he starts kicking. So Will was a rethinker, very innovative, and he would frequently reorder the design he previously agreed upon and completely change things up. So the Neptune pool, which I sent you the photos. So the Neptune pool is the large outdoor pool with all of the Grecian columns outside. No.
It looked very familiar, like you've talked about it with me before.
I did. I thought so. I dipped my foot in that pool.
And tried to get possessed.
I did not try to get possessed. Okay, so the thing about the hauntings at Hearst Castle is it's more of like memory loops. So I talked about it last season with Meg, and Em and I have talked about it, and Rachel and I have talked about it. I brought it up a couple of times. When you have your happiest or even your worst memories, sometimes those memories get stuck in a place. So like, for instance, Ghost Ship. Horrible events happened there. However, really good events also happened there. So the events got looped and looped and looped, and they consistently had to relive the memory over and over and over again. But with the Hearst Castle thing, it's more like glasses clinking and laughter, and I would hear music, and I was like, where am I hearing that music coming from? And it was, I'm not crazy.
It's all in your head.
The guides were telling me, they were like, no, we've heard this before. And I was just like, I want to come back here, but I want to come back here with like other people. So I want to take Meg. When we finally get the RV, I want to take Meg and be like, let's go. So, aware of his ability to change his mind so frequently, in a letter he wrote to Julia on March 18th of 1920, he said, "All Little House is stunning. Please complete before I can think of any more changes." At least he's aware. He's very self-aware. As a, I can't remember this word. As a consequence, not coincidence, consequence of his persistent design changes. Listen, Spanish to English brain dictionary, let me tell you, sometimes. Consequence. Consequence. Because of the design changes and financial difficulties later in the 1930s, the complex was never finished. So there were still some unfinished galleries and rooms and buildings attached to Hearst Castle.
You could say he had some unfinished business to do.
Man,
I couldn't resist.
you're so funny. I love you. By late summer of 1919, Julia had surveyed the site, analyzed its geology, and drawn initial plans for Casa Grande, which is the big house. It's also known as Big House in Spanish. Construction began in 1919 and continued through 1947 when William left the estate for the last time. That's when he moved into his second estate. Do I have a picture of that? No, I didn't save it. It was with his mistress, which we will discuss in a minute. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot about that. Where was I? I found it. Okay, during the early years of constructions, until William's stays at San Simeon became longer and more frequent, his approval for the ongoing design was obtained by Julia Morgan sending him models of the planned development. So, like, blueprints. By the late 1920s, the main model, designed by another female architect, Julian C. Messick, became too large to ship. And Messick and Morgan would photograph it and hand color the images and send that to Hearst. The castle was under almost continual construction, kind of like Winchester Mystery House, from 1920 until 1939, with work resuming after World War II until his final departure in 1947. His castle location presented major challenges for construction because it was remote. If you have never been to San Simeon, it is up in the hills. It's grass. It is dry grass. And it's what's known as a fire season hazard. Nobody builds up there anymore because one spark and everything goes up in flames over there. So, when Julia began going to the estate for visits in 1919, she would leave her San Francisco office on a Friday afternoon, take an 8-hour, 200-mile or 320-kilometer train journey to Slough, and followed by a 50-mile drive or 80-kilometer drive to San Simeon. The isolation made recruiting and retaining a workforce so difficult. And in the early years, the estate also lacked water. And it had 3 natural springs on Pine Mountain, which was 35,000 feet high, and it was 7 miles east of Hearst Castle. I'm fine. So, the issue was addressed by construction of 3 reservoirs, and Julia devised a gravity-based water delivery system that transported water from the nearby mountain springs to the reservoirs, including the main one on Rocky Butte, which was 2,000 feet or 610 kilometers less than a mile southeast of Hearst Castle. So water was of particular importance, as well as feeding the pools and the fountains. That he desired, it provided electricity, water-powered electricity. But because they had a private hydroelectric plant on site until the San Joaquin Light and Power Corporation began to service the castle in 1924. So from 1919 until 1924, those 5 years, that was kind of cool.
Personally, I would have kept the water hooked up as like a backup just in case, because early electricity was not very reliable. So constant backup. Who needs a home Generac when you got water power?
A Generac?
Yeah, it's the home Generacs or home generators.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
The more you know, shooting star. So the climate presented a further challenge, like I said, fire season. The proximity to the coast brought strong winds from the Pacific Ocean, and the site's elevation meant that winter storms were frequent and severe. Even though it's in California, it would still get cold enough for ice. It was also the essential product needed for concrete. You and I both know, what do you make a foundation out of? Concrete.
Or stones, rocks. Sometimes you use whatever you got.
Well, they use concrete and they use some stones like river stone fillers and stuff like that. But concrete.
Well, before concrete was available, they used stone. So, I mean, just saying.
As Emily would say, for yeah, concrete. So Julia had substantial experience in building steel reinforced concrete, and together with the firm of consulting engineers Earl and White, experimented in finding suitable stone. Eventually setting on a quarry from the top of the mountain the castle was built upon, they made a foundation platform. So combining that with desalinated sand from the San Simeon Bay produced a concrete of high quality, which they actually can't replicate in today's society. Later, white sand was brought in from Carmel. Beautiful, if you ever get a chance to go. Brick and tile works were also developed on site, as brick was used extensively, and tiling was an important element of decoration throughout the entire castle. Morgan used several tile companies to produce her designs, including Grubby Fans, Batchelder, California Fans, and Solon and Chamel. If I mispronounced that, I'm sorry. Albert Solon and Frank Chamel came to Hearst Castle to undertake tiling work, and Solon's brother Camille, his brother's name is Camille? I forgot I wrote this, was responsible for the design of mosaics and the blue gold Venetian glass tile used in the Roman pool, which is the indoor pool, which is where the ghost touched my foot. The cost. Buku bucks. So if you would like to bring up the generator, Rachel, to figure out how much the money would cost in today's dollars.
One momento, please.
Fantastic. I'm going to keep going just a little bit. So the exact cost of the entire Hearst Castle establishment is unknown, but there is an estimate. Kastner, which I talked about earlier, the custodian of the entire Hearst estate, says the estimate of expenditure on construction and furnishing the complex between 1919 and 1947 is under $10 million. Well, Rachel, $10 million in 1947 money is what?
You said 1947?
As I respond to the slurry of 20 some odd text messages I've gotten in the span of 40.
Are you ready to pick your jaw up off the ground?
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay, so the inflation rate from average 1947 to February 2026 is 1,365.40%.
Percent?
That's the total inflation rate. So,
Okay.
10 million in 1947 is 146,540,358.74.
That's a lot of RVs.
That's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things. But wait, there's another. Thomas Adila suggested a slightly more precise figure for the overall cost between $7.2 and $8.2 million. So let's go for the latter, 8.2.
Okay, so 8.2 million, which would be 8,200,000, would be $120,163,094.17.
I am Iron Man. That's a lot of cheddar.
It is. Like, I kind of want, I mean, even that amount back then was a lot.
I just want to pay off my debt.
Same though.
Because the sooner I pay off debt, the sooner we can get the RV. And the sooner we can get the RV, the sooner we can go on tour.
Exactly.
I mean, not on tour, but like
Technically on tour.
technically on tour. Because Josh is already aware we're a package deal.
Of course.
So is Devin, which he remembers Devin. We all used to hang out in college. And the other day she was just like, he does realize we're all a package deal, right? And I was like, he knows. He's well aware.
I can't wait to meet her.
She can't wait to meet you either. It's great. My two besties, my bestie and my life wife, two completely different people. Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So his relaxed approach to using funds for his companies and sometimes the actual companies themselves to make personal purchases and made clear accounting for expenditure almost impossible. His records were a disaster. In 1927, one of his lawyers wrote, "The entire history of your corporation shows an informal method of withdrawal of funds." In 1945, when the Hearst Corporation was closing the Hearst Castle account for the final time, Julia gave a breakdown of construction costs, which did not include expenditure on antiques or furnishings, which means big house build cost given is $2,987,000, and for the guest houses, $500,000 each. Other works, including nearly $500,000 on the Neptune pool, brought the cost to $4,717,000. Her fees for the 20-odd years of almost continuous work came to $70,755. Her initial fee was 6% commission on total costs. It was later increased to 8.5%. Many additional expenses and challenges in getting prompt payment led her to receive rather less than this. Kastner suggests that Julia made an overall profit of $100,000 at the entire time of a 20-year project. Her modest remuneration was unimportant to her. She said she didn't care about the money. At the height of William's financial issues in the 1930s, his debts stood at over $87 million. Julia wrote him, "I wish you would use me in a way that relieves your mind as to take care of your belongings. There never has been, nor will there ever be, any charge in this connection. It is an honor and a pleasure." I wonder what that was about.
Probably best we don't know.
Originally intended to be a family home for the Hearst family, his wife Millicent, and their 5 sons. 5. By 1925, his marriage was effectively over, and the San Simeon home became home to him and his mistress, the actress you know as Marion Davies. So I've said it before and I'll say it again. Did William Randolph Hearst have a mistress that lived in Hearst Castle? I did the research. It is confirmed. She lived in the estate. She lived there from the early 20s until 47 when construction was ended. Although Hearst was married to Millicent Hearst, he and Davies lived together openly as a couple for decades at the castle, never filing for divorce. She acted as the main hostess. After separating from his wife in 26, Hearst lived with Davies at the San Simeon Castle, where she entertained guests and played a key role in day-to-day life at the estate. The couple entertained extensively, bringing in Hollywood celebrities and politicians. While they famously lived at Hearst Castle, they also resided in the Davies Beach House in Santa Monica. So just to show you, because I know what Marion Davies looks like. I don't know if you did. That's Marion Davies, and this is Millicent. So, we talked about the Winetune estate in Northern California. They also had a townhouse in Manhattan, New York. Despite not being married, Davies remained with Hearst for over 30 years and even bailed him out financially, selling her jewelry when his fortune dwindled in the late 30s. They moved out of the main house in 47 due to his declining health, moving to the house in Beverly Hills to be closer to the doctors. But Millicent was a generous philanthropist and devoted mother. She died in December 5th of 1974, more than 2 decades after the death of her husband. She's buried at Woodlawn Cemetery, located in Bronx, New York. Shortly after starting San Simeon, I keep saying Sant. It's San. I don't know where the T's coming from. He had a passion for collecting so strong, he was dubbed the Great Accumulator and began to conceive the making of a castle, the museum for all the best things I can secure. Foremost among his purchases were architectural elements from Western Europe, particularly Spain. Over 30 ceilings, door cases, fireplaces, mantels, entire monasteries, paneling, and the medieval fifth barn were purchased, shipped to Hearst's Brooklyn warehouses, and transported to California. It was the colonizers. The white people did it. Much was then incorporated into the fabric of Hearst Castle. In addition, he built up collections of more conventional art and antiques of high quality. His assemblages of ancient Greek vases was one of the world's largest. He also, the Hearst estate, still has first edition vases of the Greco-Roman Empire. And I drooled at it from across the room because you can't walk across certain rooms. You're not allowed to unless you're an actual family member of Hearst. And I was literally 2 yardsticks away from it. And I was just like, give me a second. I just need to stare at this vase. Just let me
wipe the drool off my chin first.
The guide understood. She goes, we have only a certain amount of time. You have 30 seconds. And I just stared at it. The castle and his lifestyle was made satire by Orson Welles in his 1941 film Citizen Kane, which I didn't know about. So there are 4 total houses on the entire acreage of Hearst Castle and its estate: Casa del Mar, Casa del Monte, Casa del Sol, and Casa de Grande, or Casa Grande, excuse me. So ladylike. Thanks. So Casa del Mar is the largest of the 3 guest houses, provided accommodation for William himself until Casa Grande was ready in 1925. This was the first of houses that was finished. He stayed in the house again in 1947 during his last visit to the ranch, as he called it. Casa del Mar contains 5,350 square feet, 2 stories, 497 square meters of floor space. Although luxuriously designed and furnished, none of the guest houses had kitchen facilities, an omission that sometimes irritated his guests. He did it out of spite. Adela Rogers St. John's recounted her first visit. I rang and asked the maid for coffee. With a smile, she said, I would have to go to the castle for that. I asked Marion Davies about this. She said WR, as she called him, did not approve of breakfast in bed and called it lazy.
I mean, I just call it messy, but I mean, to each their own.
I mean, my husband too likes to eat in bed.
Ma'am!
He does. We eat Reese's in bed. We eat in bed. Not crackers, though. We don't eat crackers in bed.
Oh, I'm sure your husband eats something in bed.
No, we eat food in bed. Stop being a dirty Gertie. You're being a dirty Gertie. I'm saying we eat stuff.
My lives in the gutter. You know this. That's why I get along so well with your husband.
Listen. All right, Linda. Listen. Okay. So, adjacent to Casa del Mar is the wellhead, also known as the Pozo, from Phoebe Hearst's Hacienda del Pozo de Verona, which Hearst moved to San Simeon when he sold his mother's estate after her death in 1919. So Casa del Monte was the first of the guest houses originally entitled. They were originally Houses A, Houses B, and Houses C. However, he changed the names, of course. So Hearst had initially wanted to begin work with the construction of the main house, but Morgan persuaded him to begin with the guest cottages because the smaller structures could be completed quickly. He agreed. Each guest house faces the esplanade, which appears as a single story at its front entrance. So they all look to Casa Grande, which is the main thoroughfare to Casa Grande. Additional stories face rearward down the terraced mountainside. It is 2,550 square feet or 237 meters squared of living space. The decorative style of Casa del Sol is Moorish, accentuated by the use of antique Persian tiles. Rescued Persian tiles. A bronze copy of Donatello's David, tactically acquired, as my husband says. A bronze copy of Donatello's David stands atop a copy of an original Spanish fountain. The inspiration for the fountain came from an illustration in a book, The Minor Excelsior, Domestic and Garden Architecture of Southern Spain, written by Austin Wetsley, published in 1919. Hearst sent a copy to Julia Morgan while retaining another for himself and proved a fertile source of ideas. The size of the house is 3,620 square feet or 336 square meters. Julia Morgan's staff were responsible for cataloging all of those parts of Hearst's art collection, which were shipped to California, and an oral record made for the 1980s indicates the methodology used for furnishing the buildings at San Simeon. We would set the object up, then I would stand with the yardstick and give it a scale. Sam Crow would take a picture, then we would give it a number, and I would write a description. These made it into albums. Then Mr. Hearst would write and say, I want a Florentine mantle in cottage C, room B, with 4 yards of tiles. Then we would look it up in the books and find something that would fit to his liking. Finally, we have Casa Grande, which began in April of 1922. It continued until May 2nd of 1947, and even then the house was unfinished. The size of Casa Grande is 6,500 square feet or 6,360 square meters. It's a big boy. I mean, 2, but it's a big boy. The western facade is 4 stories. The entrance front inspired by the gateway in Seville. You know, the thing that's in most of the movies? Yeah. The entrance front, inspired by the gateway in Seville, is flanked by twin bell towers modeled on the tower of the Church of Santa Maria la Mayor, one of the biggest bell towers in Seville. The layout of the main house was originally to a T plan, with the assembly room to the front and the refectory at the right angle of its center. The subsequent extensions of the north and south wings were modified. The original design, as elsewhere, the core construction material is concrete, though the facade is faced in stone. In 1927 of October, Julia wrote Arthur Byron, "We finally took the bull by the horns and we're facing the entire main building with Manti stone from Utah. The cast stone balcony fronts the second floor and another cast iron on the third." That's a lot. And especially on coastline, cast iron had to be powder coated in order for the sea air to not affect it or rust it. And yes, I am rubbing my tummy, and it's because he's kicking, and this is soothing to him. Above
It's
this,
just adorable.
huh?
I said, and it's just adorable.
It is. It is. Above this is a large wooden overhang or gable. This is constructed of Siamese teak, which has since become extinct. Originally intended to outfit a ship, which Morgan located in San Francisco, the carving was undertaken by a senior carver by the name of Jules Seppo. Sarah Holmes Boutiel suggested that Julia Morgan may have been inspired by somewhat of a similar example at the Mission San Xavier del Bac in Arizona, which is one of the missions off the main thoroughfare. The curator, Kastner, Victoria, we talked about her several times, notes a particular feature of Casa Grande is the absence of any grand staircases. Access to the upper floors is either by elevators or stairwells in the corner turrets of the buildings. There are no grand staircases in Casa Grande. All the staircases are underdecorated and plain, poured concrete contrasts with the richness of decoration everywhere else. So it has no decoration in any of the stairwells.
I mean, I get it, but at the same time, that sucks.
I understand why. He was trying to keep the people looking and not stopping on the staircases. So it's just a thoroughfare.
Because accidents.
Mm-hmm. So the terrace in front of the entrance, named Central Plaza, has a quatrefoil pond at its center, which is a fountain, looks like a four-leaf clover, with a statue of Galetta on a dolphin. It was inherited, having been bought by Phoebe Hearst when her son was temporarily short on money. So Phoebe bought it for him because he wanted it. The doorway from Central Plaza into Casa Grande illustrates Morgan and Hearst's relaxed approach with genuine antiques and modern reproductions. A 16th century iron gate from Spain is topped by fanlight grille, constructed in matching style 1920s by Ed Trinkheller, the castle's main ironmonger. They had an ironmonger. And it also had the latest technology.
I mean, it was probably just easier to have one on site than to pay for somebody coming in every day anyways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had an on-site zookeeper, gardeners, everything. So they had the latest technology. They were wired with an early surround sound system, allowing guests to make music selections in which were played by a Cape Art phonograph located in the basement and piped into rooms throughout the house with a system of speakers. Alternatively, 6 radio stations were available, and the entire estate was also equipped with 80 telephones operated through a switchboard by PBX, and it was staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, and ran under an exclusive exchange, Hacienda, which also is house in Spanish. Fortune recorded an example of Hearst's delighting in the ambiguous access system provided. A guest fell to wondering how a ball game came out while seated by a campfire with Mr. Hearst a day's ride from the castle. I'll tell you, said Mr. Hearst, fumbling with a rock against it, and he was leaning, pulls from there a telephone and asks for New York and relieves the guest's curiosity. A stone from a fire pit.
Holy crap.
He had Iron Man money.
He definitely did.
Hearst and his family occupied Casa Grande for the first time at Christmas of 1925. There were a total of 7 large rooms. We're not going to go room by room. It's going to save us a little bit of time. They had the assembly room, the refectory, the library, the cloisters, the Doge suite, the Gothic suite, the Celestial suites, north and south wings, and the unfinished large ballroom. Thereafter, Millicent went back to New York, and from 26 until they left in 27, Marion Davies acted as hostess at the castle. The political and Hollywood elite visited often in the 20s and 30s. Among them, are you ready for the couture of the couture?
Yes.
Calvin Coolidge, Winston Churchill, Charlie Chaplin, my personal favorite, Cary Grant, the Marx Brothers, Charles Lindbergh, Jean Harlow, and Clark Gable are just some to name a few. You want to be popular?
It was all about who knew who then.
Churchill described Hearst fondly. A grave, simple child with no doubt a nasty temper, playing with the most costly of toys. 2 magnificent establishments, 2 charming wives, complete indifference to public opinion, and oriental hospitalities. And that's him speaking fondly. You know how Churchill often spoke of people. In another letter to Clementine, he wrote, Churchill dismissed criticism of San Simeon. His house is rudely described as the Monte Carlo casino on top of the Rock of Gibraltar, but it is better than this. Weekend guests were either brought in by private train from the Glendale station north of Los Angeles, which they had their own private train car that went to Hearst Castle itself, or by car to the castle, or flew in on Hearst's private airstrip, generally arriving late Friday evening or on Saturday. Cecil Beaton wrote of his first impressions during his visit New Year's Eve, 1931. We caught sight of a vast, sparkling white castle in Spain. It was out of a fairy story. The sun poured down with theatrical brilliance on tons of white marble and white stone. The flowers were unreal in their ordered profusion. Hearst stopped smiling at the top of one of the many flights of the garden steps. Guests were generally left to their own devices during the day. Like, have fun, do whatever you want to do. Just don't get hurt. Horse riding, shooting, swimming, golf, croquet, and tennis were all available, while Hearst would lead mounted parties for picnics on the estate. The only absolute deadline was for cocktails in the assembly room on 7:30 at Saturday night. Our alcohol was rationed. Guests were not permitted to leave liquor in their rooms, and they were limited to 1 cocktail each before dinner. This wasn't because he was mean, but he had concern over his mistress's alcoholism, and the rule was completely flouted.
I mean, that's very considerate of him to keep that in mind of her inability around alcohol and the fact he didn't want other guests to have the same issue. So I do appreciate that of him. But at the same time, she should, I don't know, maybe not be around it, period.
I mean, like, Josh's liquor in the house. He has Jack Daniels. We have one bottle. We don't have any other liquor in the house. Obviously, I don't drink. But even before then, he would be like, I just ate. Did you not hear that?
I did not.
That was loud. It sounded like I had alien coming straight out of my chest, like an episode of Firefly. So, dinner was served at 9 in the refectory. Wine came from Hearst's wine cellar, which contained over 7,000 bottles.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Charlie Chaplin commented on the fare. Dinners were elaborate: pheasant, wild duck, partridge, and venison, but also the informality. Amidst the opulence, we were served paper napkins. It was only when Mrs. Hearst was in residence that the guests were given linen ones. They didn't care. The informality extended to the ketchup bottles and condiments and jars, which were remarked by many guests. Dinners was invariably followed by a movie, initially outside and then in the theater. Actress Ilka Chase recorded a showing in the 1930s. The theater is not yet complete. The plaster was still wet, so an immense pile of fur coats was heaped on the floor, and each guest picked one up and enveloped themselves before entering. Hearst and Marion, close together in the gloom and bundled in their fur coats, looked for all the world to be big baby bears. Movies were genuinely films from Hearst's own studio, Cosmopolitan Productions, and often featured Marion Davies. Sherman Eubanks, whose father worked as an electrician at the castle, recorded an oral history. Mr. Hearst would push a button and call up the projectionist and say, "Put on Marion's Peg O' My Heart." So I've seen Peg O' My Heart about 5 times or 50 times. This is not being critical. I'm just saying that's just the way it was. That's a lot. Chase noted that this repetition tended to put a slight strain on the guests' gratitude. In 1937, Patricia Van Cleve, who was also very high elite in society, married at the castle, the grandest social occasion there since the president and Mrs. Coolidge came to visit in February of 1930. Ken Murray records these two events as the only occasion of when formal attire was absolutely required by any and all guests to the castle. Patricia, who married Arthur Lake, was always introduced as Marion Davies' favorite niece. It was frequently rumored that she was in fact Davies and Hearst's daughter, something she herself acknowledged just before her death in 1993. Out of wedlock. So, in 1938, in February, a plane crash at the San Simeon airstrip led to the deaths of Lord and Lady Plunkett, who were traveling to the castle as Hearst's guests, and the pilot, Tex Phillips. The only other passenger, the bobsledding champion James Lawrence, survived. By the late 1930s, the Great Depression and his air of prolificness had brought him to the brink of financial ruin, and debts now totaled $126 million by the end of the 1930s. So he gave up control of Hearst Corporation. Newspapers and radio stations were sold, and much of his art collection was dispersed in a series of sales, often for considerably less than he paid. He railed against his losses and perceived incompetence of the sales agents Parrish, Watson, and Company. They greatly cheapened them and us. He advertises like a bargain basement sale. So construction ended, and after Pearl Harbor, the castle was closed up and they moved to Wyntoun. They returned in 45 on a limited scale. They had construction, which ended in 47. And in early May of that year, with William's health declining, they left the castle for the last time, and they settled at 1007 North Beverly Drive in Beverly Hills. which I will now share that picture with you.
Oh, that's pretty.
That is her summer estate.
Not a summer estate. And not just a summer state. I want a summer estate.
I was going to say Texas is a summer state.
So Florida's a summer state too. That's why I want a summer estate, not a summer state. I already live in one. I don't need another.
I mean, but same. So, unfortunately, William Randolph Hearst died in 1951. His death abruptly severing him from Marion Davies, and she was excluded from the funeral by his own family. For 32 years, I had him, and they left him with left me with his empty room. In 1950, Julia Morgan closed her San Francisco office after 42 years. Ill health circumvented her retirement, and she died a virtual recluse in early 57. And in 58, the Hearst Corporation donated Hearst Castle, its gardens, and many of its contents to the state of California. Dedication plaque to the castle reads La Cuesta Encantada, presented to the state of California in 58 by Hearst Corporation in memory of William Randolph Hearst, who created this enchanted hill, and of his mother, Phoebe Apperson Hearst, who inspired it. It was then opened to the public for the first time of June of 58 and added to the National Register of Historical Places in June 22nd of 72 and became a United States Historical Landmark May 11th of 76, which is Emily's birthday. She wasn't born in 76. I'm older. I'm the oldest one on this podcast. But besides the point, we're going to be talking about our last piece, which is my favorite piece to discuss, the media. So, commercial filming at the castle is rarely allowed. Since 1957, only 2 projects have been granted strict permission. Are you ready? All right. Stanley Kubrick, 1960, Spartacus. They used the castle to stand in as the Crassus Villa. I went back and I rewatched Spartacus and I went, holy schnockers, that's it. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you wouldn't understand. And fun fact, my favorite person in pop society, 2014, Lady Gaga's music video for GUY was filmed in the Neptune and Roman pools. Fun fact, it was rumored that Lady Gaga bought Hearst Castle. However, she did not buy it. Instead, she made significant donations, payments totaling $275,000 to film the music video, funding restoration, a water study, and covering production costs in exchange for filming at the normally restricted landmark. So she made a $250,000 donation to Hearst Castle, $25,000 for funding, and standard fees, paid the standard $22,100 special event fee, and reimbursed the state for extra staffing and security. You want to know why she did it? Rare access. Filming at Hearst Castle is usually prohibited by its deed of gift, which is a special clause in the Hearst Media Corporation's contract given to the state of California, making this a unique opportunity. The funds helped restore art and sculptures, and Gaga filmed a special service announcement on water conservation to educate the public. It's also been filmed for several movies. Most of it was for documentary purposes. The Hearst and Davies Affair in 1985, Hollywood Without Makeup in 1963, California's Gold, which was a show in the 90s. Other shows is Hearst Ranch, a documentary featuring the ranch, and The Missions of California in 2007. Last but not least, the hauntings. It serves as a tourist attraction today, and many of the guest houses and outdoor pools are still intact. Estate caretakers claim to have heard footsteps, music, and laughter, as well as clinking of glasses, as if there is a party still happening in the house. This is not surprising, as the paranormal will show themselves when they see an opportunity and draw energy from the living. Sometimes, a ghost frequents a location or a house because it was their very favorite place to spend their time when they were alive. Common tales include sightings of the ghosts of Marion Davies, William Randolph Hearst, along with apparitions of other actors such as Charlie Chaplin and Churchill. What is the ghost story that everybody hears from all of the people that run Hearst Castle? Whatever the tour guides tell is the story in the room pictured below, which is the refectory, which is the one that the website that I showed you. The lanterns swing side by side. They often recite and tell you the tale. However, it is forbidden by management to write down the story or record it. So it is just by oral tales. There is no hotel nearby. You have to take a bus from the nearest hotel, which is, at the time I went, it was a Motel 6. I don't know. There's probably more hotels nearby now. But people wanted to stay overnight in the hotel, and they can't.
So you're saying there's no Hotel California there?
Okay, that song is about a mental institution, but yes, there is a hotel in California near there. Ma'am. Sassafras.
Listen, I can't help it today. I'm on a roll.
I said, witnesses have claimed to see unexplained events within the house at Hearst Castle, suggesting it may be haunted by other spirits. I've seen something similar and heard. It's eerie. I didn't like it. End of story. And that is the wonderful history of William Randolph Hearst. Hope you guys enjoyed the history lesson today.
Well, I did.
Of course you did. You're kidnapped. I kept you here.
Only because I willingly stayed. Otherwise, I could have just walked away and you'd be talking to yourself.
True.
So at least I stayed. So I was willing.
That's true. You are a willing participant in this. What? Oh. My husband's texting me. I'll message you back in a minute. I enjoy doing research on this because I love old movies. Cary Grant. Growing up, my mom would always have me watch old movies like Brigadoon and Guys and Dolls. Never Gone with the Wind. It was too long. But Cary Grant holds a special place in my heart because anytime I would have any sort of anything happen, she'd just put on Cary Grant. I loved him. He was my heartthrob. Everybody else had Jonathan Taylor Thomas and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. I had Cary Grant, who was probably in his 50s at the point when I was watching him on TV.
But the way he looked in those older movies, so chef's kiss.
So good. Now the only person I obsess over is my husband. But that was William Randolph Hearst.
But you should be obsessing over your husband.
Which apparently my therapist is so funny. He goes, "Why do you have a problem being obsessed with your husband?" I was like, "Isn't it a problem?" And he goes, "You should be obsessed with your spouse." Am I not supposed to be? And he goes, "You should be. Do you find it concerning?" And I was like, "My mom said it's concerning." And he goes, "Your mom's..." I love my therapist.
Now, to be clear, she's not actually...
No, he was making a joke. He was making a joke.
I know. I just want to put that out there for the record.
Yeah, no. Did he actually say that? No, he said a lot more other expletives, which we cannot say on this show. But besides the point, I had fun researching this. I know you enjoyed it.
I had fun listening about it.
The pools were my favorite part, and the library. Did you see the library?
I did.
If you think it smelled like old parchment leather, you are correct. It did.
Like, I want, like, wax melts and candles that smell like that, but they can never get the scent right. So, if anybody listening has a candle recommendation or a wax melt
Please
recommendation
comment.
that is truly the correct scent, please let us know.
So, fun fact that I did learn about Hearst Estate is the library section of the estate. They have somebody that goes through and takes out all the books and cleans behind them to make sure no mold grows on the books, because these are first editions. These are like original books, still in proper binding, still with proper parchment.
So, a good way to help prevent that is to have space between the book and the back of the shelf, so that way there is some airflow back there. So, a lot of people will push their books all the way to the back. Please don't do that. That's how stuff gets nasty and gunky, and don't do that. Leave space.
Yeah, I have space behind all my books up here. No, they have a space in between all the books, and I asked them, I was like, is there an area? And so they have little holes in the bookcases on the side that are in between all of them, and it's like a for airflow to get through, and it's just in the middle. And I thought that was so cool. But yeah, the more you know. Shooting star. If you guys like this type of history lesson, we're going to be doing another one next month, just to kind of give us a little reprieve from all the death, mayhem, destruction, sadness.
And who doesn't love history? I know I love history, and I know you love history. And if you don't like history, this episode's not for you.
As always, stay feral,
Bite the hand.
and we'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Well, party possums, that's today's dose of the pandemonium. Thanks for listening and watching the ADHD chaos. Review, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Tune in next week for more continued madness. And as always, stay feral.